Welcome to Sean's Thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me this evening or whenever it is for you. I trust that your days are feeling a lot easier than recently, especially the last several, well, last month at least. The energy is definitely feeling better. So I trust that you're feeling that ease or a little more ease as opposed to what we were previously feeling. And yeah, so thank you for joining me this evening. I'm here to apparently talk about the lesser of two evils. It's a pretty interesting topic, and well, I'll explain, I guess, start off by explaining, anyways, what I understand this to be. See, in life, we're often given choices, and we believe the choices that we are given are all the ones that are available for us to have. And it's almost as if our choices, as I've talked about this in the past, our choices appear to be limited, and limited in a way that it seems to be some time like our choices are choosing between the lesser of two evils. And I kind of see how that's somewhat programmed maybe us into us. And now, of course, there are opportunities where it's like there's a good choice and a not good choice kind of idea. But I mean, a lot of times we feel that, we have to give in, for example. I was just watching this TV show called Your Neighbors and Your Friends, and there was a maid who catches a criminal and then turns to a criminal. And her reasoning for it is, in a sense, like, I haven't made it any further, so I might as well go the other route, like the criminal route. And it's almost as if maybe the system was created to get us to actually see life like this, that we had to get, in order for us to get ours, we had to break the laws. And a lot of those laws, quite honestly, are very arbitrarily, createdly made up in order to essentially oversee more control upon everything. Like, I understand the whole idea of the patents, for example, was a supreme control over anything. But nonetheless, people see the lesser of two evils and like giving away their stuff essentially the moment that they sign that patent, or being harassed or hurt if they didn't, should they invent something. So, in a sense, we have been pushed into looking for that, not just from the direction of, I got to get mine, but also from the agreement to play a game that you feel deep down inside of you is rigged. That's something that I experience in Pokemon when I play it. I honestly feel the game is rigged when I'm playing it, and yet I find myself still playing it. When I see these amazing odds on some of these different tactics that get used on me when I'm playing that game. It's supposed to be a game where, there's percentages of everything, and yet so often I feel that the percentages are like weighing really heavy in my enemies, or my opponents, my opponents. That says something right there when I call it enemies, but with my opponent's ability to pull these amazing combination and variety of cards out. And me, so often I get stuck on several turns not achieving these very challenging anyways, I'm going off track there. I know that definitely goes in with the whole thing, but let's swing back to the lesser of two evils. So the lesser of two evils is essentially choosing between two people that you otherwise wouldn't have chosen between. You wouldn't even have put them in the ring together in order for you to choose them. But given those are what we've told our choices are, and that's kind of how it's been in politics for quite a while, especially in some places, when it ends up being two people pitted up against each other. And then you have, legions of propaganda artists and influencers and storytellers telling you which one you should choose. And then you choose, knowing that neither of them are going to, per se, do what they said they're going to do. You choose between the two lesser of evils, or between the the lesser of two evils. Now I'm getting to say it so often that I'm getting tongue twisted. So, yeah, so we'll take a little bit of a break from that. We're outside right now, as you see, and the community is semi-lively. Like, there's quite a few people out here, just kind of everyone doing their own thing. I'm in this central park where they have this, I forgot what they call it, but it's, I don't know, maybe I'll swing the camera over later, but it's a carousel looking building, and just on top is just a stage. So there's people hanging out here. It's pretty cool right now. It's not too cold, definitely not warm. So where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about the lesser of two evils. The questions always, came to my mind. Do we need to, or is there, or are there other options for the answer when we're given, a question between A and B? Is there a C or a D or an E or an F? Is there another option? One of the ways to essentially find that option, I would say, is healing. When we heal certain issues and traumas in our life, it's as if we're like a hot air balloon and we're actually able to elevate a little bit higher. And then if you imagine yourself sitting on top of that big balloon that's elevating the sky, you definitely have a better vantage point to the situation or to the world around you or underneath. And that's kind of like what healing is. I find that when healing, and that's thus releasing traumas and, dealing with our shit, we allow ourselves to elevate and then get that higher perspective. And I think that allows us to do even more healing, because we're able to start to see from a higher perspective of why things happened the way that they did. So when we get into the lesser of two evils, perhaps there are ways that we can perhaps not have to make that choice, to make choices to change the way we do things. So for instance, in the next time that there's someone who says that they're going to do something, some politician or any other person in the world that's made an agreement with you, and they say they're not going to do something, I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. Sorry. As I was about to say what I was saying, someone yelled a curse word out in the distance, and that definitely toasted my train of thought. But nonetheless, perhaps we can decide to live in a world where we start making all the beneficial for everyone, including myself, choices. And that's the only choice that if perhaps everyone made, maybe it would be much easier to get to where I truly do want to go. Like, I want to take a moment and sidebar on what I think New Earth is. See, I often talk about New Earth, and I have a channel called New Earth Creation, so perhaps I'll explain to what I think New Earth is. New Earth, I see, is a society that has been changed to the degree that we're all knowingly here for one another. That's our purpose, is to do unto others as we would do unto ourselves, and truly do mean it. Like, don't just put it out as a catchphrase on a t-shirt or however it is on a school book or some sort of book that you write in for a couple days and then you discard. And I've done that lot, so count me in on that. But to live in that type of environment with people and neighbors and communities and everything, to the point that perhaps we don't even need the high amount of law enforcement and security. I live in a city that not only is supported by the RCMP, it also has a private security company. And then on top of that, it has another force, which are referred to as community officers. And, maybe we don't need to spend so much of our energy on things like that if we're redirecting that energy into growing communities. And, that'll definitely come with time. But what I see New Earth is a decision for all of us to shift our attention, you can say, in different directions, and shift them away from this idea that money rules anything, See, money is a tool. Money is supposed to be a form of currency exchange, and yet it's been utilized as debts and slavery. People buy other people's services and stuff. And perhaps that's always been the way it is, and that'll be the argument that's brought up. However, maybe it's time for a different change, something new, a new way of seeing and doing things. So when, as I was mentioning before, when there's some sort of choice on who we want to perhaps put in leadership positions, we choose the good person. Oh, there was someone running. We choose the good person that, that we believe in, as opposed to the one who's going to reward his supporters with whatever. Like, I'm not calling anyone out on that. I'm just meaning that we start supporting people that we believe can be that change. And I know there's obviously a lot of people supporting, but I'm meaning supporting people that it has nothing to do with the money or the bling or the perceived power by the fancy car or house or rented this or rented that. And we start, directing ourselves to changing our world. See, I believe that partly in New Earth, it's more of a 5D type of situation, meaning that I'm talking about how to get there, perhaps, as opposed to what it is living with a community of people where everyone is in alignment with one another. And we're all looking to give as much as we receive. Like, there's a balance of that desire to give as well as a desire to receive. And with that balance, we don't necessarily need that same money transfer, because our energies that we put into the community reward us back with that which we need. And not just the community, into environment. So if you go out into the woods and you put that energy into building gardens, and that garden provides you food, then you live off the land, and free energy is free, and that'll all be sorted out. But that we can give as much as we take and only take as much as we need. See, that was a really interesting thing about my video, The Marketplace. The idea that people only take what they need. So meaning that you have the time, for example, because time is not as relevant in this new earth. You have the time to experience going to this, wherever it is, the market, whenever, each moment, each time that you need food, rather than even having to store it in your house for long durations of time, and then having to worry about manufacturing food in order to get a longer shelf life. That you have more time in order to do that on a daily basis, therefore getting the freshest, best quality possible, and then supporting the community by only buying local, not buying, but trading in a sense. And that everyone is in unison. For instance, if there's a building to be made, the community, anyone who's in that field, helps build that building. And that's what they're doing to contribute their time towards the community, is they're doing what they're skilled to do. They're doing what they have the passion and the artistic prowess, I don't know if that's the right word, but they have the abilities to do it. And everyone contributes, say 5 days a week if you want, but we can maybe knock that down to 3. Contribute that amount of time towards making the community stronger. And then you think about all of the jobs that can be released, allowing for the same amount of work that we do now to be done in a shorter time, because now we're not having to spend the money on all these overlapping, red tape type of jobs where people are being paid to do things over and over, perhaps more often than they're needed to, especially if we have a group or a society or a community of more conscious people that are living slower, that have the extra time, we'll say, to do things like check their own fire inspection type of deals, check their own how things, like invest the time in learning how to actually take care of their own properties to 100%, rather than having to hire people to do it because the rest of us are being too busy, worked over, in order to learn how to do those things ourselves, and then being too tired and having lots of excuses of why I didn't do it. So New Earth is essentially about having more time to be free, to create, to explore, and to adventure, to learn. I think learning is such an important part of New Earth. Perhaps there'll come a time where whatever we need to know, we just have the ability, just like in the movie The Matrix, when Neo suddenly was able to do martial arts. Perhaps in the future we'll have the ability to just learn as we need to learn. However, perhaps right now there are parents and children all over the world that would love to learn things together in classrooms together, like redefining how we even teach would be an essential part of New Earth. Exploratoriums is a video that I had done, and I'm very passionate. Actually, I have another video called I Foresee Exploratoriums. I definitely love that one, but recommend that you check that out, especially after this, if you do watch this live stream that I'm doing right now, because I truly do see New Earth. And New Earth isn't this idea of some like new planet that we're going to, or something's gonna whatever happen. And New Earth, I see it as simply a revelation or a revealing of the world that's already around us. If we subscribe to the simulation theory that there's overlays casted over portions of our world, perhaps our world looks stunningly different when those overlays are released. I also heard recently in a GIA report that the sky was an overlay. And that kind of fits in with a lot of other theories, we'll call them, about flat Earth or domed, or, well, simulation as well. That there's a fake layer that we're seeing above us. And even in the movie The Truman Show, they actually made you see what the dome looked like and how big it was from outer space. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep into that Truman Show. I'm going to be doing an episode coming up on the Truman Show probably. Yeah, that's a really amazing movie. So go check that out before, perhaps, or after, depending on when you're listening to this and that. So the lesser of two evils is, if we're moving into New Earth, and that's a big degree of us contributing to that, we, I guess you could say, need to perhaps believe more that that's a possibility. I'm always considering and wondering and looking and thinking, like, what's the one other thing to do so that we can shift into that New Earth? Because New Earth to me is communities and peoples filled with love, and not the sexual love. I mean the love of community and growth and strength and comradeship or camaraderie, or I don't know, unity of people. But like that idea or that feeling of brothers when you see the war movies and you see how these men have had these experiences. Now, experiences don't have to be dramatic like they are in war movies to create that bond. Like I think that it would be a great idea, and maybe I'll participate in this. Well, actually, I hope I do, of like building a house together with a group of guys. Perhaps we could start forging relationships differently as opposed to competition. In New Earth, I don't see as much competition as well. I guess that's a good point. See, I understand the whole Colosseum games type of thing that the Romans did, that was to push competition, and then to perhaps inflare having rivals and grudges, and making the media look cool because now these two people don't like each other. And yet maybe we don't have to live in a world that doesn't have that competition, that competing can be more like what you see a lot with the Ash character on Pokemon. When he loses a match, he's like, oh great, he's worried about his Pokemon, which I never understand why, because they're essentially overlay, or like they're digital beings, because they get blown up but they're perfectly okay right after. Yeah, the Pokemon characters, they're kind of like AI beings, but to live that life of adventure, I'm segueing completely off because now I'm back onto thinking what New Earth is and how grand it's going to be immersed within all that love and connection and unity, and everyone's helping one another. Like I totally like when I look at the world right now and I see what's happening in the world, some part of me understands that for many people this is very traumatic, like the issues with the banks and the issues with job losses and condo losses and developers and all that crazy stuff that's happening right now. I see that those challenges for those people are challenging right now, but many people are going to learn very valuable lessons, and they're going to be, elevated. They're going to have those experiences and then come out with so many cognitions. And then the interesting thing about it is those people who have already went through this situation, they're going to be there to absorb that impact for those people, to be there to help them. And, you know, they went through it already, and now more people are going through it. But all of that is going to help elevate us. And then I think that's, as I've mentioned before, how and why forgiveness works into this whole thing is because, well, once we start to recognize all the different elements who created the relationships or the end of relationships that we experienced, to realize that perhaps we weren't fully in charge of how the situations sometimes transpired. And I'm leaving that open because it's, I'm just talking about situations or challenges or wars or arguments or separations and divorces and fights and all of that stuff that, well, we were programmed in order to create situations like that, to perhaps self-sabotage when it didn't benefit something else. And so in New Earth, I think there's an opportunity for considerable growth because there's going to be a lot of opportunities to heal, opportunities to let go, recognizing why someone hurt you, for example, and realizing that it may not have been their fault. I'm not even saying if it was or wasn't, but it may not. Like, opening that possibility, is that enough for some people to let go, release that anger, those grudges, those bad thoughts that we have when we think of that person? And maybe as we release all of these bad thoughts, one of the things that I feel myself has went through is forgetting most of the stuff that happens. And it's not anything to do that's medical. It's meaning that I forget a lot of the small things that were inconsequential. Yet when I call out into the field and I ask a question like where something is or help me remember this, I'll pull up that record. But it's not holding on to a lot of the whatever situations, bad looks that people gave us, or honking the horn, or someone who cut me off, or some event that happened that if I were to focus on it, even from people that I know, just letting that stuff go. And I think that New Earth is also about that, meaning that it's about forgiveness and living in forgiveness, which forgiveness is a form of love. So, but all of that New Earth stuff giving us the opportunity to no longer have to make that decision between the lesser of two evils. See, I've mentioned before that when I was growing up, I always asked my grandmother and mother and aunts, like, why do you guys keep voting for these people that end up breaking all their promises every year? And I was literally told by my grandmother that she had to choose the lesser of two evils. See, she was wise enough to recognize that they both were going to break it, so it's trying to figure out which one. And then, of course, the joke's on us when we recognize that perhaps we didn't have the same amount of influence that we thought we did as a community when it came to selections. So, yeah, the lesser of two evils, that's definitely something that I would love to see less of and then none of, to make that choice. See, one of the, I guess you could say, things that God gave us was free will, the ability to make a choice. And I think that in a sense that was hijacked, even that idea was hijacked, giving us the idea that free will meant that we had the option, I guess, to choose something that was good and beneficial for us and for whoever the choice was revolving, or to do something that was less favorable. Yeah, anyways. So thank you so much for sharing your time and attention to me. And like I said, I hope we can live in a world when, well, essentially we don't have to make that choice, that we can always have the opportunity to make the best choice, not only for ourselves, but also for, well, the whole community. And when I mean community, I mean the galactic community. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing with me. I'm going to leave it right now on these flowers here. I appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you so much.